Cosmic Beauty is coming out with a new 20 pan palette. This is a Death Tarot inspired palette. Y'all already know I get so excited about all the Cosmic Beauty releases, and it's the same format as all of their other palettes. This is not a release I was anticipating. It is launching this Friday, November 28th, and also what's very special about that day is that you can also now get the Starlight palette that was only available as a set individually. And I had a lot of people ask me about when that was going to be possible, and now we finally have a date. They will be running a sale, but none of the newer releases, I believe, are going to be on sale. You can use a discount affiliate code, so I'm going to go ahead and pop mine up on the screen now. In this video, I'm going to show you some detailed swatches, eye swatches, and 2 looks, so let's go ahead and get into it. In this palette, we get a total of 20 shades. 12 of them are mattes and the other 8 are shimmers. I don't have a price for this palette at this time. A lot of the palettes are around that $40 price point. Cosmic Beauty is located in the UK. I think that price point for these palettes is very fair, but of course you have to take into account shipping costs. The shimmers in these palettes are just really good, and they've stepped up significantly over the past couple of years. And to me, it's very impressive that they've managed to keep the price points where they are. The mattes in here I find to be very buildable and blendable. I would actually describe them as being pretty beginner friendly. Here's what the whole palette looks like swatched to my arm. Another thing I just want to mention is that there was a palette that came out last Halloween called the Sinister palette, but it's not currently available, and I don't know if it's coming back. It does have some similarities in its color story, but I'm going to talk more about that at the end. All right, let's dive into some eye swatches, starting off with the shade 13. It's a very bright silver. Hard to even stay in focus on camera. You get a little bit of a topper-like effect with this one, so if you want to use it just kind of a light dusting of it, I do think you can get a little bit more of a scattered sparkle effect. Next we have the shade Scorpio, and I would describe this one as having more of a metallic texture. The shade is a really kind of deep charcoal. Have to say, I think this one would make a really beautiful day-to-day one-and-done shade. Next, we have the shade Release. I would describe this as a really beautiful, bright teal metallic. And you do also have some other similarly toned matte shades in case you wanted to do a simple look with just this shimmer. Next, we have one of the multi-chromes in the palette. This is called Acceptance. It has a pale purple base and a very strong yellow-green shift. This is definitely one of my favorite types of shifts to have in a multi-chrome, a purple with a kind of very bright and ethereal shift. Next, we have the shade Growth, which I would describe as a light, sparkly champagne. It definitely feels like even for the shades that aren't duochromes or multi-chromes in this palette, they have quite a bit of sparkle and shine. Next, we have the shade Rebirth, which is a very bright red shimmer. This one does have a little bit of an orangey yellow shift, and I think hopefully you can see that a little bit better on the eye. Next, we have the shade Transformation, and this one is either a duochrome or a multi-chrome. It has a light pink base with a strong kind of yellow shift. Very smooth in texture, just like the other multi-chrome that I swatched earlier. The quality of these multi-chromes has really been blowing me away in recent palettes. All right, last but not least, we have the shade Renewal, which is a very beautiful holographic chrome shade. At this point, we've seen a couple of holographic shades from Cosmic Beauty. I want to say this is either the second or the third palette that's incorporated them. Smooth texture, really great holographic reflect. Very happy with the holo shades that I've tried from the brand. All right, let's go ahead and dip into this palette. I think we're going to do 2 different looks, starting off with something that feels kind of light and cool, and then something that's more red toned, because the reds are definitely calling my name. So I'm going to dip in first to this light purple here and just create a little bit of a mini halo. Put a little bit on the inner corner here. I always just have such a good time using the Cosmic Beauty palettes. The mattes are so reliable to me. They are pigmented, but not so pigmented right off the bat, and they build. And the pastels are not patchy in any kind of way. And as I've mentioned in some previous videos, I just feel like when it comes to the shimmers, they've just gotten better and better over the years. And they're also becoming overall kind of less squishy and emollient than they once were. Okay, now I'm just gonna go ahead and connect the lower lash line, just adding a little bit of shadow down here, not winging it out too much, maybe just ever so slightly. And then a little bit on the lower lash line, kind of below the tear duct. Okay, now we are going to play around with placement using this gray matte here called Letting Go. There were actually a few kind of really pretty nuanced gray shades that I had been considering, but I actually think I might use a brush that's a little bit fluffier and just place some. Okay, going back over it with a smaller blush brush and just stamping it on that way. I can always blend it together a little bit more after I get the product on there. I went over it just 1 or 2 more times and built up the intensity. And then I think what I'm going to do is add that same gray kind of on the inner portion of the lid right here. And then what I'm going to do is just sweep it down a little bit under the purple, just because I want you to be able to have some gray on the lower lash line as well, so that everything is tied together. And then I think I'm going to use this kind of blue-gray matte here called Closure, and use that just a little bit on the lower lash line as well. Just kind of winging it as I go. Oh yeah, I love that shade. It's super pretty. And then I'm going to use that same shade just below the mini wing that we created right here. To tie everything together. I'm going to prime my eye with a little bit of the Clionadh Embed to the Brow Shimmer Stay. So I said I wanted to focus on kind of a lighter, cooler look. I have 2 shimmers that drew my attention. One is Acceptance. I think I'm going to use that right in the middle. And then around that, I'm going to place the shade Transformation. And I am just going to use my fingertip. I'm very excited for these shimmers because they are beautiful, shifty multi-chromes. And so yeah, this is the shade Acceptance. Like that would be pretty all by itself, but I just want to, you know, use a couple more of the shimmers, and I think they're going to go well together because they're both light and ethereal. Yeah, so now I'm just taking the shade Transformation and placing it right around Acceptance. And I'm going to place those same shimmers on the lower lash line as well. So Acceptance right in the middle. And then right around that, a little bit of Transformation on either side. Add a little bit of this silver eyeliner from Urban Decay called Cuff. Can't ever resist a waterline that pops. All right, and here is the first completed look. All right, for the second look, we are going to focus a little bit more on some of these warmer tones, the red, and I think I want to use this beautiful holographic shimmer all over the lid. So I'm going to start off with this shade called Self-Awareness and use that all over the lid and just sort of as a transition shade. I feel like that red would actually go well with the gray tones, the purple tones. There's a lot that you could use with it, but that's kind of the vibe I think I want for this look. Now we're going to dip into this shade Surrender and kind of use that as a deepening up shade more toward the outer portion of the lid. And run a little bit to the lower lash line just to connect with the lid. All right, now we're going to go in with this shade Changes and use that in the outer corner. Good. I like that this one isn't so pigmented right off the bat. Sometimes that makes it a little bit harder to work with. Actually, most of the time, makes it much harder to work with. Very buildable. And I like the much warmer tones of this look. It's just a nice contrast. You can do a lot of different looks with this palette. I feel like when I first looked at this palette, I felt a little bit intimidated of the color story and unsure of kind of what looks I would make, but gotta say, Cosmic Beauty brush palettes, they never really fail for me. Building it up a little bit. Really like the way this outer corner is looking. The only thing is that I feel like we might need something to transition these two shades together. I'm probably gonna dip into that kind of richer, deeper brown matte for that. And just adding a little bit to the lower lash line as well. All right, now we are just gonna dip into shedding and just build a little bit more of a transition between the red matte. Yeah, I think that is definitely what we needed there. Just gonna go in with this fluffy brush and blend out the edges. Now we are going to use this really beautiful holographic shade. Here is what it looks like on my fingertip. And I did use that same shimmer primer that I used on the first eye. Oh, so pretty. I feel like I could have gone in with that red shimmer too, but I was just so excited about using this holographic shimmer. I'm gonna let it have its moment, so I'm just gonna have it by itself all over the lid. And just gonna add back a little bit of red in the outer corner, just so that there's a nice transition between the shimmer and that matte. Okay, we could totally stop here, but I think I want to do one more thing. I want to use this really intense silver shade as an inner corner highlight. And I don't normally go for silver on the inner corner, but it's a really intensely kind of reflective shade. And I just thought that would be really pretty. And part of me wants to add just the smallest amount on the brow bone. Yeah, like just a dusting so it's not too opaque. And this is my second completed look. And here is both of the looks that I created with the Cosmic Beauty Death palette. All right, now that we've had a chance to go through everything, including detailed swatches, eye swatches, and a couple of looks, let's go ahead and close up with some wrap-up thoughts. So, first things first, I was not expecting this palette. I feel like in some ways it feels a bit like a Halloween palette, and I don't know if there was some delay with this launch or not. I always enjoy a Cosmic Beauty release. This color story is one that really pushed me out of my comfort zone. I wasn't sure what looks I was going to create with it, but I gotta say, I do really like the looks that I did create with it, and it meets my expectations when it comes to the Cosmic Beauty quality. The quality is there. In general, you don't have squishy shimmers. The only squish shimmer that I had was this red one, and that one you can see my fingerprint in. The other ones have a decent amount of firmness to them, and you get some special shades in here. So the shimmers that don't shift, you have some very sparkly shades, and then you have some multi-chromes in here as well. I also think that this palette, you know, it could fulfill the desire that some people have for the Sinister palette. So the Sinister palette came out last Halloween, and this is what it looks like. So, you know, if you missed out on the Sinister palette, then I think that this will actually fulfill a lot of, you know, of the desire for that, because you have blacks in here, you have grays, you have purples, and reds, and you have all of those tones in here. The main differences is that you have some more of these kind of brown tones, and also a couple of blues. Yeah, let me see. You don't have any of that in this palette. So in that way, I feel actually like you can get a greater variety of looks with this palette. And in that way, I think I actually prefer this color story to the Sinister palette. I don't know if the Sinister palette is coming back or not. If you already have the Sinister palette, you know, I don't know that you need this color story. There are differences, and those are the differences that I mentioned. They have completely different chrome shades. I feel like you get, you know, a few kind of more special multi-chrome shades in here, but they are similar vibes in a lot of ways for the ways that I mentioned. The purples, the black matte, the silvers, and the reds. So my final thoughts are, this may not be my absolute favorite color story from Cosmic Beauty, but it's another banger in terms of its quality. It performed very well. I really like the looks I came up with, and I honestly think that it's one that I'm going to keep reaching for. So it's hard to do, you know, first impressions on where it's going to land in, you know, my overall ranking of Cosmic Beauty palettes, but definitely feel inspired to keep using it. So now that we've gone through everything, I would love to hear what you think of this palette, or, you know, just some of the more recent releases from Cosmic Beauty in general. This is a great time for picking something up if you've had it on your wish list with the sales. The more recent items are not going to be sale eligible, but they will be code eligible as far as I know. So I hope you found this video helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.